Welcome to Science Access. In today's class, we'll be continuing on our stoichiometry series, and we'll be talking about how to calculate mass problem in stoichiometry. Please, if you know you have not subscribed to this channel, please kindly subscribe and put on the notification so that you get notified whenever I post a new video. So let's take our first simple example on how to do this. All right. For example, let's assume that you are asked to calculate the mass of let's say potassium chlorate. Potassium chlorate, which I used in my first introductory video. Calculate the mass of potassium chlorate needed to produce, let's say, 250 grams of potassium chloride in the equation below. Now note, it's not all examples, that all questions that they give you the equation. They can ask you that if potassium chlorate undergoes decomposition to produce potassium chloride and oxygen, calculate the mass of potassium chlorate needed to produce 250 grams of what? Potassium chloride. So in this case, the question, the equation is not given, but in this example, let me give the equation. I'm displaying the question on the board where the equation is not actually given. You can pause it and solve it first, then attempt to solve before before checking the equation that I wrote on the board. All right. So this is the formula for potassium chlorate. KClO3, all right, undergoes decomposition to produce potassium chloride plus oxygen. Now you have to balance the equation. You can watch my video on balancing of chemical equation to understand how to do this. All right, so put your 2 here first. Since we have 2 of these, we have 2 here. Then how many oxygen do we have here? This is 3 times 2, which is 6 oxygen. We have to put 3 here. So this equation is balanced. All right. Remember, you have to calculate the molar mass of this, or the mass of this that produces this. All right. To get the mass of this that produces this, you have to calculate the molar mass of this, then multiply it by what? 2. So you now get the mass of this 2 potassium chlorate here. Then you also calculate the molar mass of this, multiply by 2 to get the mass of what, if this decomposes, what mass it produced before you now start the comparison. All right, so let's do that first. How do I get the molar mass of this? You can always watch my video on how to calculate molar mass, but let me just quickly do it here. All right, the molar mass of K is actually 30. K is 39 plus chlorine is 35.5 plus this is actually 16 times 3. So if you apply your calculator, 39 plus 35.5 plus this times this, you have 48. So our answer here is 122. All right, 0.5. Okay, so the molar mass of this, remember, since this is 122.5, you multiply it by 2, so times 2. So the mass here is 245. All right, calculate the molar mass of this also. K is 39 plus 35.5. 39 plus 35.5. So if you multiply you have your answer as 74.5 multiplied by 2, you have 149. So you realize that 245 gram of potassium chlorate. Potassium chlorate is also called potassium triazochlorate 5. The oxidation number of chlorine here is 5. So you realize that 245 gram of this produces what? 149 gram of potassium chloride. And now you are being asked, to calculate the mass of potassium chlorate needed. So you are being asked to look for X needed to produce 250 gram of potassium chloride. It's very easy. Just cross multiply. All right. This times this and this times this. You now have 149 gram times, or let's just 145 times X is equals to 245 times 250. 149x is equal to, so use your calculator to do the simple multiplication. 245 times 250, and have your answer as 61250. So you can divide both sides by what? 149. So 149, then you divide this side also by what? 149. This will cancel, definitely cancel out this. We now have x is equals to 61250 all over what? 149. So divide it by what? 149. And our answer is what? Equals to, x is equals to what? 411 gram. All right. So you realize that you need 411 gram of what? Potassium chlorate. 411 gram of potassium what? Chlorate to produce what? 250 gram of this. So it's a very simple. Now, if I now ask this same question, I can decide to change this question that how many mole of this is required to produce this. So when we are talking about conversion from gram to mole to gram and all that, you can easily get that aspect of the answer. So let's take the second example. So let's take the example 2. A very common example. Let's assume the chemical reaction in which calcium actually reacts with chlorine to form what? Calcium chloride. I can ask you to calculate the amount of calcium chloride produced by imputing or by reacting 250 gram of what? Calcium in a chemical what? Reaction. So the first thing that you actually have to do is carry out write out the chemical reaction. Now, do you realize that this equation, the amount of calcium that is going to be that is going to be imputed is actually constant. So in this case, calcium is the limiting what? Reactant, while chlorine is in excess. So we are not concerned about chlorine. So, but let's first of all write out the chemical what? Equation for this chemical reaction. So we now have calcium react with what? Chlorine to form what? Calcium chloride. Now note that the chemical equation is actually what? Balanced. It's balanced. So in terms of the atoms present, they are balanced. 2 here, 2 here, 1, 1. So what is the molar mass of this is 40. So the mass of this is actually what? 40. 40 gram of this actually produced. This is 40, and this is what? 35.5 times 2. All right. So to get the mass of this here, you just calculate the molar mass and express it in gram. Okay. So now have 35.5 times 2 plus 40. Remember, the molar mass of this is 35.5. Since we have 2 atoms of chlorine, so I multiply by 2. 35.5 times 2. Then molar mass of this is 40. So if you add it together, which is 71 plus 40, and you have 111. What are we calculating? The mass of calcium chloride produced by reacting 250 grams of calcium. So what mass will be produced? What mass of calcium chloride will be produced by reacting with 250 grams of calcium? It's simple. What you have been doing, and just cross multiply and look for what x, which definitely is 40 times x. 40 x is equal to this times this. Now have 111 times 250. And what is our answer? 27750. Divide both sides by 40. So if you divide here by 40, this will go at x. And if you divide here by 40, you have 693.75 what grams. So 693.75 grams of calcium chloride will be produced by what? 250 grams of calcium. So it's a very simple chemical reaction. In my next series on, I'll be calculating how to change mass to mole, mole to mass, and also I'll also talk about how to mass volume what problem in stoichiometry. All right.